Hello, my name is Cadet Cristino Garcia. I am a cadet from Detachment 842 from the University of Texas at San Antonio, and I'll be speaking about General Brown's message. In his paper, Accelerate, Change, or Lose, he speaks about how the Air Force's dominance and reign over the airspace domain is no longer uncontested due to the fact that the world around us is changing very quickly and how quickly our adversaries are advancing with their technology to get ahead of us and to one day defeat us. He speaks about how what is good enough today will fail tomorrow, which I completely agree with. The Air Force wouldn't be where it's at today had it not been for its adaptation and changing to circumstances they face in the past, present, and to circumstances they foresee themselves in the future. The Air Force has been adapting at a good rate for many years, but General Brown thinks we can do better. He believes that the Air Force must change at a much faster rate, as the way we are right now isn't good enough for the challenges he sees the Air Force facing in the future. There is a quote by Winston Churchill that quickly wraps up everything General Brown is saying in his message, and he says, "He who fails to plan is planning to fail," which is exactly what General Brown is explaining in his message. He wants to make sure that the Air Force is doing its due diligence by keeping its people prepared for what is to come so that we are not getting ready as we are already ready. He then goes on and speaks about how about the importance of the empowerment of our airmen and what role it plays in developing the Air Force and staying as the dominant figure when it comes to air, space, and cyberspace. He elaborates by explaining how current leaders today must be able to develop the leaders of tomorrow, the future leaders, by educating them about the adversaries that we are facing today, to the challenges that await them for when they are the ones making the important decisions with airmen under them. He talks about how airmen should be innovative, creative, and courageous, etc., because if everyone takes the core value, excellence in all we do, literally, in whatever role that they are or they have in the Air Force, we'll have the Air Force running on all cylinders, and we'll keep the Air Force and Space Force the best in the world.
Hi, I'm Cadet Alyssa McKnight from Det 30 at the University of Arkansas, home of the Thunderhawks. As I think about what the Department of the Air Force can and will accomplish within the next decade, I'm inspired by all the possibilities. As Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Brown has said throughout his publication, Accelerate, Change, or Lose, the next generation of airmen will face a much different environment than our leadership did at the beginning of their careers. Our near peers, China and Russia, are aggressively developing their air capabilities to deny and compete with our air capabilities. As our air superiority is threatened, we must find ways to innovate and accelerate through that which makes us us, our people, our airmen. In the section titled Empowered Airmen Can Solve Any Problem, General Brown asserts, and I quote, that our airmen must be multi-capable and adaptable team builders, as well as innovative and courageous problem solvers, and demonstrate value in the diversity of thought, ingenuity, and initiative. We must develop leaders with the appropriate tools to create and sustain an environment in which all airmen can reach their full potential, valuing the many aspects of diversity within our Air Force. Airmen who do not or cannot reflect these and the related attributes we value fall short of being the future Air Force leaders we require. I find this concept further reflected in a lecture given at Ncls by Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Ruttenberg, who serves on the Air Force's Women's Initiative team at the Pentagon, which was titled David versus Goliath, Overcoming Hidden Barriers in Gender Diversity. Lieutenant Colonel Ruttenberg gave firsthand experience how the regulations that were written many years ago by men for men covertly exclude many women from the pilot career field. She speaks about how she had to obtain a waiver to attend pilot training due to not meeting the minimum height requirement of 5 foot 4 inches. For context, following a study in 2018, the average height for women in the United States is 5 foot 3.5 inches. This means that on average, a female service member will require a waiver to go to pilot training. Waivers are a band-aid for a broken system and do not fix the problem at large. That problem being that many of the regulations and AFIs we use today were never originally written with women or minorities in mind. This causes an unequitable need for waivers and other accommodations in order to serve the country we want to protect. In order to make the changes as a service that will ensure our ability to deter our near peers and maintain our air superiority, we need to retain airmen who embody the core values and value the diversity that is required to stimulate new and innovative ideas. To do this, we need to demolish these hidden barriers and do better at listening to the perspective of others. I do not doubt that in the next decade we will have made some groundbreaking changes that will reshape the way the Department of the Air Force operates. And I intend on being a part of the generation of airmen that helps change and adapt the policies that could keep us from achieving all we as a diverse and amazing force can accomplish. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cadet Temescu from Det 055 UCLA. Today I'm going to be talking about General Brown's message at Ncls, his 5 takeaway points of advice, and also how one point of advice really applied to one of the talks that I heard at Ncls. So his 5 points are 1. Fail to succeed. So you're always supposed to try hard in every mission, but if you fail, try again. Next is to challenge the status quo. There's a common saying in the Air Force that you will meet that's the way we've always done it. But he encourages us to push boundaries and take initiative. Next is to trust but verify, to be inquisitive, to think about your goals and ask for what you want. Next is to have attitude. Be confident, so confident that you could even be cocky, but not too cocky. Always stay humble, approachable, and credible. And finally, to define success in your own life, in long and short-term successes. So the point that I really had a key takeaway was to challenge the status quo. And I really felt this in Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Ruttenberg's talk. She is a female pilot, and throughout her pilot journey, she constantly had to challenge the status quo. This is because the Air Force's standards for building planes was based off of Caucasian males. And therefore, it cuts off a lot of females, around 40%, from being able to fly aircraft because of height restrictions. So during her career in the Air Force, she constantly pushed the status quo and fought her way to becoming a pilot. Currently, she also is volunteering in the Women's Initiative Team, also called the WIT. And they are responsible for passing and helping to create the new regulation for allowing women to wear ponytails in the Air Force. So throughout this talk with Lieutenant Colonel Ruttenberg, I really felt inspired and thought back to General Brown's words about pushing barriers and taking initiative and challenging this initiative. And I hope that in the Air Force and the Space Force, I will be able to also live by this piece of advice and challenge barriers and think before I just blindly agree to something. Always push the barriers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cadet Neil. I attend Detachment 810 at Baylor University, but I go to Texas Tech. I cross town from Texas Tech to a satellite campus, and I attend Baylor University's ROTC detachment. So this NCLS, we had an awesome time. We had a great opportunity to hear from a myriad of professional and motivational speakers. And my this component of the video, this I guess recap, is to kind of take what General Brown's opening message was and see how it lines up with the other professional speakers that were at NCLS. So I'll kind of summarize General Brown's message for you as well. And there were 5 points of advice that he gave in his presentation. And those points were: fail to succeed, challenge status quo, trust but verify, have attitude, and define success. And what I'm going to do now is kind of go over a few of the speakers that I had the opportunity to take in and digest from, and show you how they compare to General Brown's message. So my first speaker that I had this week was retired SEAC Mr. John Troxel, and he was a very, very rough and tough kind of guy, and he had some stories of being in Afghanistan, and showing and describing to us how he had to hold his men to the same standard that he was held to, and in some cases when he didn't, things that they had to do, missions they had to accomplish, they weren't as well prepared for. So, in line with what General Brown said, Mr. John Troxel took it a step further, and he said, to be prepared for the worst day of your life, you have to be PME hard, which stands for physically, mentally, and emotionally hard. You have to train, and going back to General Brown's message, you can't succeed on talent alone. You have to have attitude. You have to have drive. So you have to be training physically hard, mentally hard, and emotionally hard. Later on, Mr. John Troxel went on to kind of summarize, in his opinion, 3 things that a leader needs. And they line right up again with General Brown's message. And I'll read those 3 things to you here. A leader must be present. You have to be present as a leader, taking part in the same hardships your people are. You have to be persistent as leader. You must be prepared. Take no shortcuts. Ensure every nose to tail inspection of resources, people, etc. You want to have what a nose to tail means is you want to have everything that is mission essential, your resources and your people, and whatever else. You need to make sure that everything's in line. As a leader, that is your responsibility. Performance. Watch me, follow me, do what I do. Lead as a personal example so that others may follow your example. So those 3 things that a leader needs to be: presence, persistent, and performance. They once again line right up. They line right up with General Brown and his point of challenging the status quo. Moving on to Chief Master Sergeant Thomas Case. He's a TAC P. One of the main points of his briefing, which was a very emotional, and he wasn't emotional, but he definitely told a very emotional story. And it was a story of resiliency, and not resiliency that took place over a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, but it was a story of resiliency that took place over the course of many, many years. A very personal story, and as we probably know, resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulty. But as you may be well aware, that it's not always easy to recover from something that takes place over the course of multiple years. And in this instance, this TAC P, he did a fantastic job, and he handled it, and he got the job done. He got the mission done. Even when there was difficulty back home, he still was able to perform and serve his country to the best of his ability, even amidst all the trials and tribulations over there outside the wire. He still got the job done. And of course, resiliency, it plays into General Brown's portion that if you're gonna fail, you need to learn from it, because failure, as long as you have put everything into trying, as long as you don't let failure be from the lack of trying, you will learn from it, and you will bounce back, and you'll be resilient. So that's it definitely ties back into General Brown's message. Finally, I heard from Miss Shannon Polson. She's a former Army Apache helicopter, and she's the author of The Grit Factor. She is a lively speaker, and probably the most engaging speaker I've listened to this weekend. And she had some great analogies that I'd like to use as well. So resistance, right? Resistance, failure, things that block your way, that get in the way of you pushing forward, ultimately they will help you rise, like an aircraft. So the analogy she used was, if you're in an aircraft, you turn your aircraft to take off, turn that aircraft into the wind. And so resistance will help you rise, is her analogy. But she used it throughout the entire presentation. It was amazing because we get it being an RPA pilot select. That's what we understood it. So this ties back into General Brown's presentation pretty well. At when he talked about defining success, you have to set your goals and ask for you want and pursue what you want. Sometimes what you want may be hard to achieve, but if you set about and you face your fears and face resistance, you will rise. Ultimately, you will rise. So that's what I have to share with you today. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to these videos, and I hope you have the opportunity to attend NCLS in the future and learn from the great speakers and the men and women who take their time to share their experiences and stories with us, so that we can learn from them and make for a better future for the Air Force and the United States Space Force.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cadet Ryan Verano, and I'm a cadet at Detachment 004 at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. This year at NCLS, we learn a lot about warrior ethos and what it means to find the inner courage to overcome great difficulty, to be resilient and persevere through our greatest struggles and stay true to who we are. But how do we do that? One of the speakers I listened to, Dr. McCulley, an Air Force Academy graduate and pilot of over 20 years, identifies mindfulness as a key component to thriving in those kind of situations and finding that warrior ethos. Mindfulness allows us to disconnect from our negative thoughts, execute decisions under stress, and thrive in that kind of environment. But in order to do that, she identifies a personal philosophy that allows us to have our guiding principles of who we are and what we will do. To find our personal philosophy, she asked 3 questions. What do you value? Where do you find purpose? And how do you define success? By answering those questions, we'll have a grounded philosophy of who we are and what we're going to do. That way, when under stress, those values and beliefs won't be challenged and will be less susceptible to frustration or stress, and be able to focus more finely on what is happening in the moment and stay true to our decisions. However, mindfulness cannot be achieved overnight. It requires repetition and habituation. It's a skill that requires all airmen to actively contribute to in order to make sure that they're developing themselves and others to be as mindful as possible. It allows reflection and emotional regulation before we make a decision, and allows us to refine our focus in those kind of situations, and lowers stress and prevents immediate response to whatever may come our way. And this all ties back to General Brown's message of empowered airmen can solve any problem. Airmen at all levels must train to make sure that we can make quality decisions and act readily whenever available to meet these kind of deadlines and timelines under combat or in competition with our adversaries. Airmen must be able to be innovative and courageous problem solvers and demonstrate value in diversity of thought and initiative. And they can do that by practicing mindfulness, by having that personal philosophy of who they are and understanding what their values are, and always having a grounded philosophy of what they are doing and what they will do tomorrow. Now, by doing that, it'll allow our Air Force and Space Force to develop leaders with appropriate tools to create and sustain an environment in which all airmen can reach their full potential. That was only a small tidbit of what some of the lessons I learned at NCLS, and hopefully next year I'll learn a lot more. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cadet Brown from Detachment 430 at the University of Mississippi. Today I'll be connecting General Charles Q. Brown's message to what I hope and believe the Air Force will become in the next 10 years. There's no doubt that the United States Air Force is the world's greatest Air Force, but that is because of the diversity, innovation, and determination of our airmen. For the next 10 years, I expect the Air Force's innovation to excel beyond expectations. The Air Force and now Space Force are in coexistence, leading the next decade in a new generation of air and space dominance. In General Brown's kickoff, he mentioned to challenge the status quo. So that is what I expect will be done, that every airman will challenge the status quo to create an even stronger version of the Air Force that our country needs and deserves. It will soon be our time to be officers with our own duties, but we have to remember that as individuals, we can have an impact. that we can change things for the better. When I look into the future of the Air Force, I see more women and women of color as pilots. I see the Space Force with men and women regularly traveling to and from space. I see an opportunity of something profound. The foundation is set. The expectations are set. With that being said, referring to the points given by General Brown, I will do my best to stand to these points. To challenge the status quo, that I will set goals for myself, long and short. I will have the confidence and attitude needed, and I will define my success. I will always put my best foot forward in everything that I do to help the Air Force achieve every goal necessary for greatness. We have the opportunity in our grasp. The only thing that we have to do is deliver on every front. Remember the legacy we are stepping into and the legacy that you can leave behind. Thank you.